this is going to be maybe surprising, but I was just telling somebody yesterday that you are more likely to get injured jumping off of like a skydiving accident than being successful at a startup.
So Pritesh, the one thing that we talk about often is not just thinking about how to build a services business, how to build a product business, how to build a technology business. I think that our conversations center around these big ideas of how to solve these big problems. And sometimes these problems that you want to solve in the business world, and I say problems as an opportunity, sometimes these problems are big, sometimes they're small, sometimes they're wonky, sometimes they're a hybrid of all of those things. In all our discussions, you always point out, hey, is this like a feature or is this a product? And it seems like there's some kind of hierarchy to this thinking when you come up with a way of solving something. So when you have a business idea or a business venture and we want to try to go after it, how do you think about is there a framework for kind of features and products? Is it something bigger? Do you have to zoom out on? How do you kind of think about it?
So it's a great question, right? So there is a concept of features and products, and we can go into it a little bit. But every now and then, as a tech guy who's done companies, you get on every dinner party, someone has an amazing idea, right? And they go, oh, I got an amazing business, right? Or they don't start that way. They go, I got an amazing idea for you to do, right? So that just blows my mind, but I control myself these days. And I go, I used to say, and my wife said, you got to stop doing this. It's I used to say, is it an idea or a business?
How do you think about the difference between the two?
Because most people, there are so many good ideas, but they cannot be all good businesses, right? So then you ask yourself, what is a business? A business is something that makes money, right? And again, we are not building altruistic businesses, right? Let's just say pure capitalism. The purpose of a business is to crank out cash, right? So I'm not talking about ideas that solve cancer. I'm not talking about the Red Crosses of the world or any of that, right? That's a different category. That's the goodness of humanity. Let's leave that aside, right? We're talking about core capitalism. So then you say, okay, I have an idea, and all ideas are almost always good. The question is, and I'm training my daughter to think this way. It's and it's brutal because you don't want to do it to a little kid. But you say, how many people are going to use this? And it just really crushes the fun out of every conversation, because you quickly realize that there are 7.5 billion people out there, and maybe 1,000 people will use this thing, and you're well, that's a good idea, but you wouldn't even be able to buy a burger out of this thing. Forget about building a business.
But let's pause on that for 1 second, right? So I think that most of us, when we have these ideas, in a lot of ways, the human spirit is very artistic. They have their own kind of self-manifested idea creation, and the creation process of it is deeply personal to us. And I think every single human loves to see something that was they imagined in their head, and it kind of comes to life. Even you showed me, the app that you're working on with your daughter right now. It may or may not take off. We have no idea, but it gets her. She now has this idea. It went to random sketches, and now you have a Figma file based on it. It brings her idea to life. Before we go to the kind of capitalistic nature of it, can you talk about that? The rawness of having an idea and bringing it to life quickly. Because you and I sketch it pretty quickly. You and I probably brainstormed the idea saying, hey, we battle tested. But can you talk about the raw human emotion of, man, I have this idea and I have to see it come to life. And when I see it come to life, I feel this joy. How do you feel about that?
I think every person in this world should make something and try to sell it. Whether it's a lemonade stand, or whether it's a drawing that you made, or whether it's an app or whatever, every person should actually make it. Don't try to just be the other side of the equation. Actually make it and then try to sell. And you quickly realize a few things. One is making things is hard, and selling things is hard, right? And I say this with all due respect to everybody. In the future, 20 or 30 years from now, you will be either making robots or oiling robots, right? So the thing is, or selling robots. So you can make robots, you could sell robots, or you'll be oil robot, oiling robots. It is unfortunate, but it's true. AI is taking over everything. I think a large portion of many jobs will be automated, making burgers, making drinks, checking you in, self-driving cars. It's nonstop, right? So you can just imagine the world is going down that path. Like, of course, like, governments will probably bring in universal basic income or something and like make everybody happy. But still, there is this acceleration of democratizing like most things is happening. Like, for example, 200 years ago, 98% of the jobs were farming. Today, 2%. People just like don't realize it. Like most people not farmers anymore, right? Like the same thing is happening again at an accelerated path. So maybe not 200 years, maybe it's going to be 60 or 70 years, right? So going back to the conversation, my short answer is that I think once there's this little fire that just gets lit, right? So in the example of my daughter, she has this idea. Maybe we'll talk about it sometime. What I'm looking forward to is how determined is she after the idea launches? Because that's the hard part. Everybody thinks the idea. No, when you launch the idea, nobody uses things. Nobody thinks it the same way you did. Nobody's as excited as you were. And now the burden is on you to get everybody on this thing, right? So is she going to make a sign, stand in front of her school? Is she going to make a sign, stand in downtown St. Pete and like convince people that they need this app? I'm going to help her do it. But she has to stand in the sun and do it. I'm curious how far she goes with this. She's a little crazy. Like I have a feeling that she'll try. I just don't know when she's going to give up, right? But I think everybody should try this because that inspires 1 out of 1,000 people will be successful. And that is the future of humanity. That person will bring like true value, true growth, true inspiration to humanity, right? Like that kind of stuff. So, but going back to our conversation about features, products, right? A feature is an idea, right? It could be a product. And like in my mind, like the differentiation between a feature and a product is will somebody like pay you for a specific feature? Then it's probably a product. Let's talk like more relevant to our industry. Zillow app is a product, right? You download it and there is like a core slew of functionality. But would you download an app just to like use the hard feature? Like just harding something? No, that's a feature. You wouldn't download an app just to do that, right? So that's like and again, I'm using extreme examples. Like the hard is the smallest possible feature that can be in the app, right? Like, so that's kind of how to think about it, right?
That brings me to this idea of like, what we see, the founder's curse in a lot of ways, right? Many founders in a lot of ways they romance themselves with these features and they're like, man, I really I want these 3 features in the product no matter what. And sometimes there's the personal passion is so intricately tied with lack of whether or not it's going to even work. I was talking to one of my friends the other day and I was like, how many companies are on GitHub archives? Right? How many companies?
Brutal.
It blows my mind because I myself have probably 3 or 4 that are on ice on GitHub. Like I will log in and I'm like, man, I have 4 of these and I know that I wrote checks to build stuff around this. And I will tell you, Pritesh, I don't know if you feel this way because you've done several of these ventures, is I have gotten just personally, I was an idiot my first time around because I just romanticized so much with what we were trying to build. And then the second one was better. The third one was better. The fourth one was like, hey, I'm not taking anything personal. I just want I want to put the, like you say, minimum acceptable product, a MAP out there and have people react because people giving us feedback, people being wild, people being mean, people being thoughtful, you could never manufacture that feedback. Otherwise, they're actually helping us in so many ways. And so for first time founders to get it right, I think it's so hard, right? It's so hard.
It's impossible, man. Like I have never met a first time founder who's willing to launch the product. Like they are so scared to launch the product because at the bottom of their heart, they are not ready for rejection.
Yeah.
Only when you failed a couple times, or not failed, but at least launched a couple times is when you have dehumanized the process, right? You've taken your emotions out of it and you say, I know this is a good idea, but I don't know if everybody else also thinks it's a good idea, and if they're willing to pay for it if it's a business, right? And those are the 3 categories: good idea, and then willing to pay for it, and then how many are willing to pay for it, and that makes it a business.
Yeah.
Right. So oftentimes people give you advice around, oh, go get your first check, I'm scared to like first check. What about the second check?
Yeah.
So someone like is emotionally attached to you, writes you the first check. Now you're thinking, oh, someone wrote me a check. Well, that's not enough.
Let me ask you this, and I want to go with through the hierarchy for a second, but I've done this before, and I'm curious kind of your advice to founders, and may they be, prop tech founders or technology founders or engineers or just service business people that are, building a product in their business. There is a time when the founder has an idea and invests time, effort, resources going down the path, raising the money, et cetera, to go down the path of building this idea. And there comes a time when you look back and say, I don't think that was the right decision. Like, you go down the path and you burned X amount of cash, and that you learned that didn't work. What advice do you have for that founder who maybe it's their first or second time founder, when they've spent a big chunk of time and resources building something, launching it in the marketplace, and they realize that it was not the right idea or was not the right implementation? It's in their head that they're like, man, if I can't get this right, I'll never get anything right. Am I actually going to ever succeed? Like that head trash is there. Like, how do you kind of counsel that founder?
So this is a great question. And what I'm about to say, I've personally done, right? So I'm not about to give advice that I haven't done personally. The moment you realize that your idea is not going to work, I think it is your obligation to offer the money back to the investors, whatever is left. And there are two reasons to do this. One is you almost get forced into a pivot that was not your original idea. So your passion in that pivot may or may not exist. If the pivot is real, then you're not failed, right? Pivot is a natural process of a startup. So when a startup quote unquote pivots, they have just found what works in the market. So that's not failure. What I'm saying is when you realize your idea doesn't work, that means you have gone through the process of pivoting different places and that doesn't work either. So you have two choices. Choice number one, you just spend all the rest of the money and like say, hey, I tried. Choice number two is to have that hard conversation saying, hey, I'm going to give you 45 cents or 55 cents left on the dollar. It's not working. In 100% of the investors, not 100%, but a large percent of the investors will come back to you saying, no, just keep going. It will work out. They will now want that money back because they were hoping for a 10x, 20x, 50x, or whatever is in their mind because it's a startup investment. But that's the hardest conversation. In fact, those investors come back to you a year or 2 years from then, or even sometimes 6 months, thanking you for like actually being, honest and just giving them the money back. And you build relationships that are stronger. And two is, by doing that, you're valuing your time. And this is the most important thing, is as a startup person, you're paying yourself nothing. Like, I was paying myself $0 for the most part. And in the highest case scenario in a startup, it was like $60,000 or something, which is not even survival money in most cases. So what you're really doing is you're like, this is not going to work. You're wasting money and you're wasting your time. You could be using your time to build the next thing. And most people who start startups don't just stop in the middle. Most people go to the next idea, the next idea, the next idea. So you should just go on to the next idea. This didn't work. The fact that you have the audacity to even start a startup, because the likelihood of failure is like significant, right?
Yeah, that's a great answer. I tell you, we underestimate, as founders underestimate the warmth and empathy of investors. Investors know exactly what they're getting into. And, especially a seasoned, private equity or angel or VC who has done this before, they know what they're getting into. And we'll pivot from this conversation quickly, but I'll tell you that the only time, I don't know if you felt this, the only time I felt a rub with investors is that if they don't have any experience in the asset class. So you take a straight real estate investor who is used to an asset-backed an asset-backed kind of facility, that you have a building or a piece of real estate is backing it. They are used to dividends, they're used to depreciation, and suddenly they invest in a startup, and you're like, hey, this is 7 years of illiquidity, and I can't even give anything to market. It freaks them out. But as long as they have experience with the asset class, I truly believe that investors are really savvy and they get it. They know their risk, they know their odds, and they actually want you as the entrepreneur and the founder to succeed. They're gunning for you. They're writing the check is a symbol of their seriousness that they're betting on you in a lot of ways. And right. So as you said, being honest with them or talking to them or saying, hey, here's what I'm thinking and this is what I'd like to do is a really positive thing as opposed to not doing that thing, right?
Yeah. Well, like, yes, this is going to be maybe surprising, but I was just telling somebody yesterday that you are more likely to get injured in a jumping off of like a skydiving accident than being successful at a startup. It's true. It's crazy. The odds are insane, right? The odds of you succeeding in a startup are way lower than you getting injured in a skydive. And people jump off of the planes all the time. I'm like, dude, like you're taking like serious risk here because people are getting injured. Like 1 in 100,000 people get injured or like fatal sometimes, right? Like it's crazy to jump off. In my mind, it's just like you're taking too much risk. You're jumping out there. It's very likely you're going to get injured.
Let's come back to the framework. So we're talking about kind of like features, which is an idea. We're talking about a product, someone that actually may go download something, pay for something, use something in a holistic experience. But there seems like there's another level. Is it a collection of products? Is it a business? Is it a company? How do you think about that next level?
So this is an interesting thing. As a company grows, like most companies, when you ask them, like, did Airbnb think about Airbnb? They want no. The answer is 100% no. Facebook, same thing. Nobody knows what the outcome looks like, right? Even with us right now, that's what's happening. We're trying to build a super app, but we've talked about the Lego blocks. We've talked about, all of these different bits and pieces that are coming together. But individually, we have a series of product lines, right? Like our AI is a product line, our BI is a product line, our signature product is a product line, our transaction platform is a product line. There are these different product lines that we have. And now we have a slew of product managers that have it's just going. It's on steroids now, right? And I was talking to them the other day and I was like, you could all individually build your product, but if you all become best friends, you will build a company.
What's that? Explain that.
Because the thing is, like, Real Signature, for example, works beautifully well on its own. You don't need to know anything about any other product for it to be treated as a signature platform, right? If it was 10 years ago, we would have launched it as a signature platform and competed with DocuSign almost because but now it's commodity, you don't need to do that, right? Same thing with a bunch of other things that we have done, right? But if they talk to each other, then there is a synergy between the AI platform that we've built and the signature platform we've built. There's synergy between the AI platform and the transaction platform. So yeah, you can go in today and say, start a new transaction. Oh, what's your transaction? Price, what's your commission? 2.5%. Okay, what's the other side? This, that. And 10, 20 questions later, you've got your transaction. Or you could partner with our AI team and say, hey, start me a transaction for MLS number 12345. My commission is 2.5%.
Yeah, amazing.
And now you've got a beautiful synergy between two product lines. And now you've got a company that's an AI first company.
Yeah. Right.
So, of course, none of this is possible without, I would say there are dimensions to this. So this is the dimension one was feature or product, and the company is what I would say. The other dimension to this is the platform. So, and platform is a loosely used word, but in our context, I would say when you have a lot of Lego blocks in a bag, that's a platform. And we've talked about it. And then every product is a different assembly of similar or the same Lego blocks. So what we've spent all our time doing in the last, 3.5 years is build a platform. And we've named it Reason. That's our platform. And then we have these product lines coming out of this platform. But every time we do something, we don't actually think about, oh, that's the product. We think about, hey, that's the opportunity. What's the product? And what's the assembly of the Lego blocks? And what are the missing Lego blocks? And how long will it take? How much will it cost? And how big is the opportunity?
Dude, it's so powerful that you said that. I have not even clued you into this. So yesterday I had a meeting with our operations team, and we were working through a few different things that in our Pro Teams initiative, and it is very easy to go to the thinking around, well, it would be great if we could do this. It would be great if we could do that. It would be great if we could do that. And some of those are aspirational ideas, and some of those are just born out of pain, right? Hey, we're getting stuck doing this. And I was listening, and they were all right. I was listening, and I found myself not solving the problem or solving the pain or solving the aspiration. As the aspirational ideas and the painful ideas were being discussed, I kept going back to what one or two Lego blocks would solve all of these, right? And so at the end, at the end of the conversation, I was like, hey, I think I have an idea. I think I have one. If we could, pitch Pritesh on this, it's one idea, one Lego block that if we had in place, it could solve 80% of issues. Do you believe so? They said, yes, but there is this other nuance. I go, okay, then I said, what if we had a second Lego block? We would be able to solve all the 9 ideas we talked about, and it would infinitely scale in the future. And they were like, then I went through each of the ideas and I said, hey, if we had these 2 Lego blocks, would you be able to solve problem A? Yes. Problem B? Yes. Problem C? Yes. Problem D? Yes. So we were able to solve everything, so that the solution was not about turning in a product ticket to like build a feature. It was like, hey, I'm way more confident that I can go pitch the product team saying, if we can have these 2 Lego blocks, it will ultimately scale the solution. So I think this Lego block conversation has my diagnostic filter flipped as well, because I'm not looking to solve anything. I'm just saying, what Lego block do we need, or what do we already have that we can reuse? But that also allows us to utilize this platform in a much more thoughtful way.
Yeah, I mean, this is even our internal product teams are doing the same discovery of the Lego blocks, because people are joining the team, different timelines, right? So they don't know what exists. So the very first time we talk about like, hey, here's a new feature, here's a new product, whatever it is, we say, okay, go discover all the Lego blocks that exist. You're asking for a activity feed. Okay, go find out other places we have the activity feed, and how much of your problem is already solved or not. It probably is. Yesterday, I was talking to one of our product managers, and he's researching every tax code that exists in the country, because we're trying to automate taxation in a few places. And I said, well, not only do you need to research all the tax code that is in the country, however, you also need to research what we've already done.
Yeah. Like the existing API integrations in LA County, et cetera, right?
Exactly. And then you have to ask yourself, how can I generalize this thing? Like, what are the 2 basic use cases? Is the tax coming from the gross or the net? Are we saving the tax and paying the county, or are they paying? That's essentially a 2-dimensional, 2x4 matrix. And you start forcing your solutions into this matrix and see if it works. Can you force your solution into generalizing it? Because then it's just a configuration.
Your team and the technical folks that are listening to this are going to appreciate my next comment. So we were working through this operations problem, and I was like, hey, I'm going to get a little technical here, but this is C++ like 101, right? I go, listen, everything is based on 3 things. It's abstraction, inheritance, polymorphism. Literally, those are the only 3 things. So if you abstract it out, you know that there's an object you can abstract. If it inherits, hey, this tax code inherits all these properties. And if there's something polymorphic, you're like, hey, every time you get a tax code, apply this. So it doesn't matter what tax code you actually include. In a lot of ways, that is a Lego block, right? So while there are 3 technical words for it, in essence, those are the Lego blocks. So but when we put language to the solution, it makes it so much more real and so much more approachable, which is really fun for both of us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the fun at Real is just started. I think now we're going to enjoy the benefits of this platform, which is a little nuts. Like Wallet is a great example of a product line that is going to get launched based on the platform. We had to build a bunch of Lego blocks, and now those Lego blocks are available for anybody to use, which is scary.
Yeah. Let's to wrap this up. Here's my question for you. It's hard for folks, especially like a product manager coming in or a team member watching something, say, hey, I am here. I was assigned X product, real signature, or by broker agreement, or what have you. But they have to like work on that, but still zoom out and have bigger context. What advice do you have for kind of founders, both in the services business, like a real estate agent, or who's building something in the prop tech world? Like, how do they go kind of bottom up and top down simultaneously without losing context?
Yeah, it goes back. I think it goes back to understanding the value of your time, and then saying, if I spend X hours in building the Lego block that can repeat, how many Y hours is it going to save me over time? If the if it doesn't save you time, that means like it's not a repeatable action and you just have to kind of do it once. But if you can build these Lego blocks in your systems, in your processes, and you can start identifying what is your final dollar outcome per exercise, I think that's where you start scaling your business. So can you build a Lego block that can be repurposed without you being present and have an outcome in dollars for your business? Right. Or outcome in time, which is money.
So just to recap all this, both from a product perspective and a services perspective, sometimes we forget that Lego blocks come in many different shapes and sizes. For some people, it is a Zap that runs in the background, updating a Google Sheet. For some people, it's just an SOP that, you have a virtual assistant in the Philippines execute for you. For some people, it's hey, there is a CRM system where you push a button and 4 things happen. For some people, the people are your Lego blocks. They come in and they do the work. So I think the one thing that we'd like for you to take away from this episode is that if you constantly think in terms of Lego blocks, it's always not a piece of technology. Sometimes it's a technology, sometimes it's a process, sometimes a piece of AI, sometimes it's a thing, but it's a tiny asset in your business. And the more of those you have and the more of those you can collect and put together to achieve that big goal, something powerful happens. So Pritesh, my big takeaway today was how founders build stuff is really powerful. And it feels like we're coming back to this Lego block analogy often, which feels like a great kind of platform solution for us.